The morning had been chaotic, as most mornings were for Sarah Mitchell. At 34 years old, she had learned to embrace the controlled chaos that came with raising a 3-year-old daughter. Emma was in her typical preschool mood, refusing to eat her breakfast cereal because it was too crunchy, insisting on wearing her pink princess dress over her clothes despite Sarah's gentle protests, and asking endless questions about why the sky was blue and where clouds went at night. By 9 in the morning, Sarah was already exhausted, and the day stretched ahead of her like an endless tunnel. She knew exactly what she needed: fresh air, sunshine, and the peaceful serenity of nature. She needed Riverside Park. Riverside Park had become Sarah's sanctuary over the past year. After her divorce from Emma's father had finalized 6 months ago, Sarah had struggled with depression and anxiety. The quiet moments she spent watching Emma play in the open spaces had become therapeutic. There was something about the park that healed her: the way the afternoon sun filtered through the old oak trees, the sound of children's laughter echoing across the fields, the gentle murmur of the river that gave the park its name. Every time Sarah sat on her favorite bench overlooking the playground, she felt a little piece of her fractured heart mend. That Tuesday in early October was particularly beautiful. Sarah had checked the weather forecast that morning and smiled when she saw the prediction: 78 degrees, clear skies, and gentle breezes. Perfect. She packed Emma's small backpack with her favorite toys, 2 bottles of apple juice, and a container of organic grapes that Emma had specifically requested at the grocery store the day before. Sarah chose comfortable clothes: her favorite faded blue jeans and a cream-colored sweater that Emma had given her for her birthday. She wanted to be comfortable enough to sit on the ground and play with Emma if her daughter requested it, which she often did. The drive to Riverside Park took only 15 minutes from their modest suburban home. As Sarah pulled into the parking lot just after 2 in the afternoon, she felt the familiar sense of peace wash over her. The park was moderately busy, not crowded, but with enough people to feel safe and alive. She could see families scattered across the grass, couples walking hand in hand along the riverside path, and children of various ages playing on the modern playground equipment. A group of teenagers played frisbee on the open field, their laughter carrying across the park. An elderly couple sat on a bench near the water, feeding ducks and enjoying the golden afternoon light. Sarah took Emma's small hand as they walked from the parking lot toward the playground. Emma chattered excitedly about everything she saw: a butterfly, a bird, a cloud that looked like a dinosaur. These were the moments Sarah treasured most, the simple observations of a child discovering the world. Emma's innocent wonder helped Sarah see things she had stopped noticing years ago in her hectic adult life. The divorce had forced her to her priorities, and spending quality time with Emma had moved to the top of her list. Once they reached the playground, Emma immediately gravitated toward the sandbox, her favorite spot. She loved building castles, creating roads for her toy cars, and burying her small plastic figurines in the sand, imagining elaborate stories about kingdoms and adventures. Sarah helped her daughter settle into the sandbox, making sure Emma's pink dress was arranged so it wouldn't get too dirty. Then Sarah walked to her favorite bench, just far enough to keep a watchful eye but far enough to allow Emma some independence. She sat down with a contented sigh, pulling her phone from her purse to check messages. Her best friend Rachel had sent her several texts asking about their plans for the weekend, and Sarah smiled, responding that she'd call her later to discuss. The afternoon sun felt warm on Sarah's face. She closed her eyes for a moment, breathing in the fresh autumn air. There was a crisp scent mixed with the earthy smell of leaves and grass. She could hear the distant sound of the river, the playground equipment creaking as children played, and the overall ambient sounds of a beautiful day. For the first time in weeks, Sarah felt genuinely calm. The anxiety that often plagued her seemed to fade away in the gentle afternoon light. She opened her eyes and looked over at Emma, who was completely absorbed in her sandbox world. Her daughter was using a blue plastic shovel to dig, her tongue sticking out slightly in concentration. a habit Emma had developed when focusing intensely on something. Sarah smiled, her heart swelling with love for her beautiful daughter. Emma was resilient, happy, and seemed unaffected by the divorce, though Sarah knew children were often more aware of adult tensions than parents realized. Still, bringing Emma to the park regularly seemed to help her daughter thrive. Sarah watched other parents scattered around the playground. There was a mother with twin boys who were climbing on the equipment with impressive agility. A father pushed a toddler on the swings, the little one squealing with delight. An older grandmother sat with her grandson, both of them working on something in the sand near Emma. Sarah felt a sense of community among these strangers, all connected by their roles as guardians of the next generation. She found herself grateful for these shared moments, these glimpses into other families' lives. Time seemed to move differently at the park. Minutes stretched into hours in the most pleasant way. Sarah found herself lost in thought about work. She was a graphic designer for a marketing firm and had several projects due the following week. But even thoughts about deadlines couldn't diminish her peaceful mood. She had learned to compartmentalize, to set aside worries during these precious park hours and simply exist in the moment. As the afternoon progressed and the sun began its slow descent toward the western horizon, casting longer shadows across the playground, Sarah was grateful she had made the decision to come here. Emma had built 3 elaborate sandcastles, had swung on the swings while Sarah gently pushed her, and had made a new friend, a little boy named who was also 3 years old. The 2 children had played together for nearly an hour, communicating in that wonderful way that young children do, needing few words to share in imaginative games. Sarah had no idea that in just a few minutes, this ordinary, perfect afternoon would transform into something extraordinary, something that would be talked about for years to come. She had no way of knowing that fate was about to intervene in the most unexpected and remarkable way. At that moment, as she sat on her bench watching her daughter play peacefully in the golden afternoon light, everything was still normal, still safe, still wonderfully, blessedly uneventful. But destiny was approaching, getting closer with each passing moment, preparing to reveal something that would change everything. Officer James had been patrolling the same district for 8 years. He knew every street, every alley, every corner store, and every family in the community. His job had become second nature to him, responding to calls, writing reports, and maintaining order in his precinct. But the thing that made his job meaningful, the thing that drove him to work harder and stay dedicated despite the stress and danger, was his partnership with Duke. The German Shepherd sitting in the specially designed cage in the back of his police cruiser was more than just a working animal. Duke was family, a brother, and the best partner any cop could ask for. Duke was a 5-year-old German Shepherd with a coat as black and tan as midnight fire. His physique was impressive, muscular, lean, and built for performance. From his alert, intelligent eyes to his alert ears that constantly rotated toward sounds humans couldn't even detect, Duke was the embodiment of a professional police dog. The dog had nearly 8 months of intensive training at the Police K9 Academy, where he had excelled in every program offered. He was trained in narcotics detection, explosives identification, crowd control, suspect apprehension, and search and rescue operations. Duke held multiple certifications and had been involved in over 300 successful operations since joining's patrol unit. The morning had started like any other. Arrived at the station at 6 in the morning, well before his shift officially began at 7. He went through his pre-patrol routine with Duke, a thorough inspection of the police cruiser, checking all equipment, reviewing the day's assignments, and spending quality time with his partner. Genuinely believed that the bond between a handler and a police dog was crucial to their effectiveness in the field. He spent time talking to Duke, petting him, and mentally preparing both of them for whatever the day might bring. Around 2 in the afternoon, received a routine dispatch call. There had been a minor incident at the downtown shopping center, someone suspected of trespassing. It was a low-priority call, the type that handled regularly. After addressing the situation and determining it was a misunderstanding, he decided to spend the remaining hours of his shift doing preventative patrol work. This meant driving through various neighborhoods and public spaces, maintaining a visible police presence and being available for emergencies. It was the type of work that kept the community safe and gave people a sense of security, knowing that law enforcement was present and vigilant. Pulled his black and white police cruiser into the parking lot of Riverside Park around 2:30 in the afternoon. The park was a popular community gathering place, especially on beautiful days like this one. It was the kind of location where people felt comfortable and where families came to enjoy nature and each other's company. However, parks could also be places where problems occurred: drug deals, theft, suspicious behavior. Part of his job was to maintain a regular presence at these public spaces, ensuring they remained safe for families and children. As opened the rear door of his cruiser to let Duke out, the dog immediately became alert. The German Shepherd's nose began working, processing the multitude of scents in the air. The park environment was rich with stimuli: grass, trees, water, people, food, and hundreds of other olfactory signals. Duke had been trained to filter through this sensory bombardment and focus on specific scents related to his work. His ears rotated toward various sounds, cataloging the playground noises, the river sounds, and the ambient sounds of people enjoying the afternoon. Clipped Duke's professional handler leash to the dog's collar. This wasn't a casual walk. This was a working patrol. The leash was designed specifically for police work, giving maximum control while allowing Duke some freedom to move and investigate. They began their routine walk through the park, starting along the perimeter and gradually moving toward the more populated areas. Greeted people they passed, maintaining a friendly but professional demeanor. Many park visitors waved at Duke, and some children pointed excitedly at the impressive police dog. Always took these opportunities to educate the public about police dogs, explaining that Duke was a working animal and not a pet. As they walked deeper into the park, Duke's behavior suddenly changed. The dog's entire body tensed, and his nose began working more frantically. His ears perked up to full alert status, and his body language shifted from casual patrol mode to active detection mode. Immediately recognized the signs, Duke had caught something. In their years of partnership, had learned to read his dog's subtle communications. Duke was indicating an alert, which meant his nose had detected something his training had identified as significant. The dog began pulling on the leash, his powerful muscles straining as he moved in a specific direction. Duke's training had been thorough and precise. When the dog detected narcotics or other target substances, he would alert his handler. However, Duke was pulling toward an unusual location. Normally, the dog alerted to specific vehicles, trash receptacles, or suspicious individuals. This time, Duke was pulling toward the playground area where children were playing. Tried to gently redirect the dog, firmly but kindly tugging on the leash to bring Duke back to heel. But the German Shepherd was absolutely determined, his professional training overriding his handler's attempted redirection. "Come on, Duke," said, his voice commanding but confused. "Let's go this way, boy." But Duke had no interest in obedience at that moment. The dog's instincts were screaming at him to continue in this direction. Had learned over the years to trust his partner's nose. It was rarely wrong. But this was unusual territory. Duke was pulling toward the sandbox area where a small child was playing alone, completely absorbed in building something in the sand. Several other families were scattered throughout the playground, and felt increasingly awkward about having his working police dog approach the play area. Other parents in the park began noticing the situation. A few mothers instinctively moved closer to their children, watching the large police dog being pulled toward the playground. One woman grabbed her son's hand protectively. Another parent took several steps back, positioning herself between Duke and the children. The atmosphere shifted from peaceful and relaxed to tense and alert. Could feel the weight of attention, the scrutiny of multiple parents suddenly focused on him and his dog. Continued to try redirecting Duke, but the dog was stronger, more determined, and absolutely focused on something. The German Shepherd's nose continued working frantically, his body language indicating urgency. His mind raced. What was Duke detecting? Why was the dog so insistent about approaching the playground? In his experience, when Duke became this determined, it usually meant something significant. "Easy, Duke," said, his voice a mixture of authority and concern. "Easy, boy." But Duke pulled harder, his powerful frame nearly dragging across the grass toward the sandbox. Could see parents watching with increasing concern. He could see the small child in the sandbox looking up, completely unaware of the approaching police dog. Everything seemed to be moving in slow motion, yet at the same time, everything was happening very quickly. Had no idea that in the next few moments, something would occur that would defy explanation and leave witnesses speechless. Sarah's peaceful afternoon meditation was interrupted by a subtle shift in the atmosphere around her. She couldn't quite pinpoint what had changed, but something felt different. The ambient noise of the playground seemed to pause momentarily, as if the entire park was holding its breath. She opened her eyes and immediately spotted the cause of this strange atmospheric shift. A police cruiser had parked in the lot. An officer was now making his way through the park with an enormous German Shepherd on a leash. The dog was impressive and intimidating, with its perfectly groomed black and tan coat and alert, intelligent expression. Sarah's maternal instincts immediately activated. She straightened up on her bench, her eyes narrowing slightly as she tracked the trajectory of the police officer and his dog. Most mothers would have been unconcerned. Police officers with K-9 units were common in public spaces, and they typically maintained professional distance from civilians and children. However, something about the way this particular police dog was moving seemed different. The dog wasn't casually walking. He was pulling, straining against the leash with noticeable determination. His body language suggested urgency and focused intensity. Duke's entire physiology had transformed from that of a casual patrol dog into something far more purposeful and driven. Every muscle in his powerful frame was taut and energized. His nose worked constantly, inhaling deeply and processing scents with an intensity that was almost visible in his body language. His ears rotated forward, capturing every sound, completely focused on something specific. His tail, which had been relaxed moments before, now stuck straight out, indicating heightened alert status. To anyone familiar with dog behavior, it was obvious that the German Shepherd had detected something. The question was what? The direction Duke was pulling was unmistakable. The dog was dragging Officer directly toward the playground area. More specifically, Duke appeared to be pulling toward the sandbox where Emma was completely engrossed in her construction project. Sarah felt her heart rate accelerate slightly. She stood up from her bench, her protective instincts overriding her rational mind. Although she knew logically that a police dog with an officer was unlikely to pose a threat, the sight of the large, alert German Shepherd being pulled toward her daughter triggered her protective mechanisms. She began walking quickly toward Emma, her eyes never leaving the approaching dog. Other parents in the park had also noticed the situation. A woman near the swings grabbed her toddler's hand and moved away from Duke's path. A father playing catch with his son stopped mid-throw and watched warily. A grandmother sitting near Emma looked up from her phone, her expression shifting from peaceful contentment to alert concern. The playground, which had moments before been filled with the carefree sounds of children playing, became noticeably quieter. Some children continued playing, unaware of the minor commotion, but several noticed the police dog and became curious or cautious, depending on their individual temperaments. Officer was becoming increasingly uncomfortable with the situation. He had been a police officer for 12 years, and he prided himself on his professionalism and his ability to handle his dog appropriately in public spaces. Having Duke pull toward a children's playground was not standard procedure, and definitely not something he wanted to encourage. He tried multiple times to redirect the dog, using his training and his authority as a handler to convince Duke to change direction. He applied steady pressure to the leash, his voice firm and commanding. Duke Heel said, his voice authoritative and clear, "Come on, boy, let's go this way." But Duke was not responsive to standard commands. The dog's dedication to his detected target completely overrode his training to obey his handler's directions. This was highly unusual. In the 5 years of their partnership, Duke had been an exceptionally well-trained and obedient dog. The German Shepherd was so disciplined that often used him as a training example when instructing new K9 handlers. Yet now, Duke was essentially ignoring his handler's commands, his instincts and training in narcotics detection, apparently taking precedence over his obedience training. Applied more pressure to the leash, trying harder to physically prevent his dog from advancing toward the playground. His arms tensed with the effort, his feet digging slightly into the grass as he tried to anchor himself and prevent Duke from continuing. But the dog was incredibly strong, his muscles rippling under his coat as he strained forward. It was becoming clear to everyone watching that the dog's determination to move forward was stronger than the handler's ability to hold him back. Emma, still sitting in the sandbox, finally noticed the approaching dog. She looked up from her castle, her small face showing curiosity rather than fear. Most children her age would have experienced some level of anxiety at the sight of a large police dog bearing down on them. Their instincts would tell them that this was an unfamiliar, large animal, and caution would be appropriate. But Emma had always been an unusual child. Her temperament was naturally calm, and she possessed an openness to new experiences that was remarkable for her age. She watched the dog with interest, tilting her head slightly, her expression thoughtful and calm. Sarah was now moving quickly toward Emma, abandoning her bench and crossing the playground in purposeful strides. Her heart was pounding in her chest, and she could feel adrenaline coursing through her veins. She was perhaps 20 feet away from Emma when the situation reached its critical point. Sarah's mind raced through possibilities and concerns. What if the dog was dangerous? What if there was a reason the officer couldn't control it? What if something had spooked the animal? She quickened her pace, prepared to scoop Emma up and shield her from whatever was about to happen. Officer was also moving quickly, embarrassment and concern flooding through him. This was not how he wanted his professional reputation to be defined. He had never experienced his dog behaving this way in public. The situation felt like it was spiraling slightly out of control, and he needed to regain command of the situation and his dog. He tried again to redirect Duke, pulling firmly on the leash and using his most authoritative voice. "Duke, no, that's enough," commanded, his voice sharp and clear. But Duke had reached a point where nothing could deter him. The dog was operating purely on instinct and training at that moment. All of his senses were locked onto something specific, something that was drawing him forward with undeniable power. The other parents watched with bated breath, their cameras and phones coming out almost instinctively, sensing that something unusual was about to unfold. The playground had become a stage, and everyone present knew they were about to witness something out of the ordinary, though none of them could have predicted just how extraordinary the moment would become. Emma stood up slowly in the sandbox, brushing sand from her pink dress. She continued to watch the approaching dog with calm curiosity. Sarah was almost to her daughter now, less than 10 feet away. Officer was bracing himself for whatever was about to happen. The police dog was pulling with every ounce of strength in his powerful frame, his nose working frantically, his body completely focused and alert. The moment hung in suspension, pregnant with possibility, waiting for the next action, the next word, the next gesture that would determine everything. Time seemed to slow down as Emma stood in the sandbox, watching the massive German Shepherd approach. She was only 3 years old, yet something about her demeanor suggested a wisdom beyond her years. Most children her age would have reacted with fear or panic. The vast majority of toddlers, when confronted with a large, unfamiliar dog moving with such intensity and purpose, would instinctively cry out or run away. The natural survival instinct of young children is to distance themselves from potential threats. But Emma was different. Perhaps it was her naturally calm temperament, or perhaps it was something else entirely, something about her that made her see the world differently from other children her age. Emma watched the dog with an expression of pure curiosity and openness. Her blue eyes, the same shade as her mother's, followed every movement of the German Shepherd. She didn't see a threat. She saw a living creature, an animal with its own story and purpose. Children, before they are conditioned by society's fears and anxieties, often possess an intuitive understanding of the world that adults have long forgotten. Emma possessed this quality. She had no preconceived notions about police dogs or their potential danger. She simply saw a dog, a large, impressive dog, but a dog nonetheless. Sarah was now only 5 feet away from her daughter, her maternal protective instincts at their absolute peak. She could see the determination in the police dog's eyes, the intensity of the animal's focus. She could hear officers' commanding voice trying to control his partner. She could feel the tension radiating from every parent on the playground. But she could also see something in her daughter's expression that gave her pause. Emma didn't look frightened. Emma looked calm, almost peaceful, as if she understood something that everyone else didn't. Sarah slowed her approach slightly, torn between her desire to shield her daughter and her instinct that something unexpected was about to unfold. Officer was experiencing a moment of genuine professional crisis. His 12 years of law enforcement experience and his 8 years of partnership with Duke had never prepared him for this particular scenario. He had trained countless hours with his dog, had practiced every command and behavioral protocol imaginable, and had never experienced Duke behaving in this manner. The dog's refusal to obey his redirects was unprecedented and deeply troubling. His mind raced through possibilities. Was Duke sick? Was he having some kind of episode? Had something traumatized the dog? Had always prided himself on his ability to control and command Duke, yet in this moment it seemed as though the dog was operating completely independently. The other parents and children on the playground had become completely silent. It was as if the entire park had paused to watch what was unfolding. Some had their phones raised, capturing video. Others stood frozen, uncertain whether to intervene or observe. The grandmother who had been sitting near Emma stood up slowly, her hand covering her mouth. A father who had been playing with his children lowered the frisbee in his hand and turned to fully face the unfolding scene. Everyone sensed that something unusual was happening, something that went beyond the normal protocol of a police officer and his dog passing through a public park. Emma took a step forward out of the sandbox, her small feet sinking slightly into the sand as she moved. She reached down and brushed some of the sand from her pink dress, her movements slow and deliberate. Her eyes remained fixed on Duke, watching the dog's approach with an expression of calm acceptance. She showed no signs of fear, no indication of concern, no hesitation. It was as if she had been waiting for this exact moment, as if some part of her understood that this encounter was meant to happen. Sarah stopped moving toward her daughter, uncertainty flooding through her. Everything in her wanted to rush forward and grab Emma, to pull her to safety. Yet something in Emma's calmness made Sarah pause. She had learned over the past year since her divorce to trust her instincts more, and her instincts were now telling her something contradictory to her fear. Her instincts were whispering that this situation, though unusual and potentially dangerous, was not what it seemed. There was something happening here that transcended normal understanding, something that logical explanation. Duke continued his relentless advance toward the sandbox. The dog was now only 10 feet away from Emma, then 8, then 6. Officer was practically jogging backward, his feet struggling to find purchase in the grass as he desperately tried to slow his dog's momentum. His voice grew increasingly urgent and commanding as he repeatedly attempted to redirect Duke's behavior. "Duke, stop, that's enough, heel." Commands grew more forceful and desperate with each step. But Duke had completely transcended the boundaries of normal obedience. The German Shepherd's entire being was focused on this single moment, this single encounter with this single small child. Every fiber of his being, every ounce of his training, every instinct programmed into him by genetics and environment was driving him forward with unstoppable purpose. It was as if the dog had been waiting for this moment his entire life. Emma's calm expression shifted slightly, and a smile began to form on her small face. She tilted her head, studying the approaching dog with an expression of recognition and understanding that was absolutely remarkable for a 3-year-old child. Her lips opened, and she began to speak. Her voice was small but clear, carrying across the playground despite the tension and the chaos of the moment. What she said next would change everything. In that critical moment, before chaos could fully consume the scene, before parents could rush in to intervene, before Officer could succeed in restraining his dog, Emma spoke. Her voice was innocent and pure, untainted by the fear and anxiety that had gripped the adults around her. She spoke 2 simple words that emerged from her small lips with perfect clarity and perfect conviction. "Good boy," Emma said softly, her voice warm and genuine, and filled with an emotion that transcended age and circumstance. The world seemed to pause. The words hung in the air like a benediction, like a blessing, like a truth that everyone present suddenly recognized and understood on some deep, primal level. Those 2 words, spoken by a 3-year-old girl to an approaching police dog, would become the catalyst for something extraordinary. Those 2 simple words would echo through time, changing lives, inspiring hope, and reminding people of the power of innocence, courage, and unconditional love. Officer felt the tension in the leash change. Duke had stopped pulling so violently. Sarah found herself holding her breath, tears already beginning to form at the corners of her eyes, though she couldn't have explained why. The other parents watched, cameras recording, phones capturing every second of what was about to unfold. Emma stood in her sandbox, in her pink princess dress, with sand still clinging to her small feet, speaking words that would soon be heard by millions of people around the world. The moment had arrived, the pivotal instant that would transform an ordinary Tuesday afternoon into an extraordinary story of connection, compassion, and the unexplainable bond between a child and an animal. Everything was about to change. The moment Emma spoke those 2 words, "Good boy," something fundamental shifted in the universe. Officer watched in absolute astonishment as his dog's behavior transformed completely and instantaneously. It was as if someone had flipped a switch inside Duke's brain, changing him from an intensely focused working dog into something entirely different. The transformation was so dramatic, so complete, and so unexpected that felt his jaw literally drop open. His mind struggled to process what he was witnessing. Duke's entire body language changed in a fraction of a second. The tension that had been rippling through his muscular frame dissipated like water flowing away. His pulling on the leash ceased immediately. The dog's ears, which had been forward and alert, relaxed into a more natural position. Most remarkably, Duke's intense, focused expression softened dramatically. The predatory intensity that had characterized the dog's demeanor moments before evaporated, replaced by something warmer, gentler, and infinitely more approachable. Instead of continuing his relentless advance toward Emma, Duke did something that completely shocked Officer. The dog slowed his pace, his powerful legs moving more deliberately and carefully. Duke was no longer pulling. The dog was walking at a controlled pace, almost as if deliberately moving slowly to avoid frightening the small child. When Duke reached Emma, instead of displaying the alert behavior that had driven him toward the sandbox, the dog gently sat down directly in front of her. The massive German Shepherd, a professional police dog trained in narcotics detection and crowd control, lowered his entire body into a submissive sitting position. His powerful frame, which could weigh over 80 pounds, settled onto the sand with surprising gentleness. Officer felt his heart nearly stop. In his 8 years working with Duke, he had never witnessed the dog behave this way toward any civilian, let alone a small child. The dog had been trained to maintain professional distance, to focus on his work, to interact with handlers and other police personnel, but not to seek affection or connection with strangers. Yet here was Duke, sitting submissively before a 3-year-old girl, his entire demeanor transformed from working dog to gentle companion. What happened next would remain forever etched in Officer's memory. Duke's tail began to wag. It wasn't the excited, energetic wag of a playful dog, but rather a slow, deliberate wagging motion that seemed to convey genuine emotion and connection. The German Shepherd's fierce eyes, which moments before had blazed with intensity and purpose, became warm and kind. The dog was looking at Emma with an expression that could only be described as affectionate. It was as if Duke had suddenly awakened to the presence of this small human and recognized something profound in her. Sarah felt tears streaming down her face. She was standing frozen, approximately 3 feet away from Emma and Duke, unable to process what she was witnessing. The anxiety that had flooded through her moments before had evaporated, replaced by a sense of wonder and amazement. She could see that her daughter was not in danger. In fact, Emma appeared to be in the most gentle, safe hands or paws possible. The dog that had appeared to be charging toward the playground with reckless determination was now sitting peacefully before her daughter like a faithful family pet. The other parents on the playground had also begun to move closer, drawn by the shocking transformation. Their phones remained raised, cameras and video recording capabilities capturing every moment of the extraordinary scene unfolding before them. No one was exactly sure what had happened or why it had happened, but everyone recognized that they were witnessing something unprecedented and remarkable. Emma reached out her small hand toward Duke's head. Her movements were slow and deliberate, as if she understood completely what she was doing and the significance of the gesture. Her tiny fingers, covered in sand from her playground activities, gently made contact with Duke's soft fur. She began to stroke the dog's head with the kind of innocent tenderness that only a young child could possess. Her touch was gentle, respectful, and filled with a kind of love that seemed to transcend species and understanding. Duke remained absolutely still. The powerful dog did not flinch, did not pull away, did not display any sign of aggression or discomfort. Instead, the German Shepherd sat perfectly still, his tail continuing its slow, gentle wag. The dog appeared to be receiving Emma's touch with gratitude and acceptance. It was as if Duke understood that this moment, this connection with this particular child, was sacred and special and not to be disrupted or rushed. Officer stood several feet away, completely stunned and speechless. His professional training had taught him to remain calm and composed in crisis situations. He had been trained to maintain authority and control. Yet in this moment, all of his training and all of his experience seemed irrelevant. He was witnessing something that transcended the normal boundaries of animal behavior and police dog protocol. Sarah found herself moving forward slowly, drawn by the need to be near her daughter. She positioned herself just behind Emma, her hand gently resting on her daughter's shoulder. Tears continued to flow down her face, though she couldn't articulate exactly why she was crying. She felt overwhelmed by emotion, joy, relief, wonder, gratitude, and something else that she couldn't quite name. It was as if some part of her understood that she was witnessing a moment of profound significance, even if she couldn't fully comprehend what that significance was. The grandmother, who had been sitting near the sandbox, approached slowly and carefully. She positioned herself to the side, respectfully maintaining distance but wanting to be present for the extraordinary scene. Other children began to gather around, drawn by their own curiosity. Parents who had been watching from a distance moved closer, sensing that the danger had passed and that something remarkable was unfolding. Officer finally found his voice, though it emerged barely above a whisper. I don't understand what's happening," he said, shaking his head slowly. "In 8 years, Duke he's never done anything like this. He never interacts with civilians this way. This is incredible." Emma continued to gently stroke Duke's head, completely absorbed in the moment with the dog. Duke remained perfectly still, his eyes half closed in what could only be described as contentment. It was as if the dog had finally found what he had been searching for, finally discovered the reason for his relentless pull toward the playground. The connection between the 3-year-old girl and the 5-year-old police dog was undeniable, tangible, and absolutely mesmerizing to everyone witnessing it. The playground had transformed from a scene of tension and anxiety into a scene of profound peace and beauty. The afternoon light, which had seemed ordinary just moments before, now appeared almost golden and sacred. Cameras continued to record. Parents whispered to each other in amazed tones. Children watched with the wide-eyed wonder that only young people possessed. And in the center of it all, a small girl in a pink dress continued to pet a large police dog, creating a moment of pure, uncomplicated love and connection that would soon be witnessed by the entire world. The video that would change everything was captured by a woman named Jennifer Martinez, a marketing professional who had brought her 2 children to Riverside Park for an afternoon of fresh air and relaxation. Jennifer had been sitting on a bench, scrolling through her social media feed, when she noticed the commotion beginning near the sandbox. Her initial concern about the police dog approaching the children had quickly transformed into fascination as she watched the extraordinary interaction unfold. Without really thinking about it, she had raised her phone and begun recording, instinctively sensing that she was witnessing something significant and unusual. Jennifer's recording was remarkably clear and comprehensive. The video captured the intensity of Duke's approach, the calm demeanor of little Emma standing in the sandbox, and the shocking moment when Emma spoke those 2 words, "Good boy." Most importantly, the video captured Duke's complete transformation. The way the dog's entire body language shifted from focused intensity to gentle affection. It also captured Emma's tender touch as she stroked Duke's head, and the apparent contentment and peace that radiated from the police dog. The video was approximately 3 minutes long, and in those 3 minutes was contained a story so powerful and so heartwarming that it would resonate with millions of people. That evening, after returning home and giving her children dinner, Jennifer sat down at her laptop and edited the video. She added a simple title, 3-year-old girl says good boy to police dog. What happens next will shock you. She included a brief description of what had occurred, explaining that she had witnessed the incident at Riverside Park that afternoon. Then, almost casually, she uploaded the video to her Facebook page, her Instagram account, and her Twitter feed. She didn't have any idea that she was about to become the instrument of something that would reach millions of people. Within the first hour, the video had been shared 300 times. Within 2 hours, it had been shared over 1,000 times. By midnight, the number of shares had exceeded 10,000. People were commenting frantically on the video, expressing amazement at what they were witnessing. Comments ranged from emotional outpourings of love to scientific speculation about animal behavior. Some people claimed they had cried while watching. Others insisted that the video was proof of some kind of spiritual connection between humans and animals. The video was being shared across multiple platforms, reaching demographics that would typically not connect to one another. By the next morning, the video had gone viral. News outlets around the country were beginning to pick up the story. Local news stations in the area where Riverside Park was located led their morning broadcasts with the video. Anchors struggled to contain their excitement as they described the footage. By mid-morning, national news networks had contacted Jennifer for interviews. CNN, Fox News, and MSNBC all wanted to know more about the incident. Jennifer found herself suddenly in the spotlight, being asked to explain what she had witnessed. She gave several interviews that day, each time describing the scene at the park with wonder and amazement in her voice. Officer received a call from his police station commander around 10 in the morning on Wednesday, the day after the park incident. The commander's tone was unusual, a mixture of confusion and excitement. The commander explained that a video of and Duke from the previous day had gone viral on social media. Thousands of people had seen it. News outlets were calling the police station asking for interviews with and Duke. The commander wanted to know exactly what had happened at Riverside Park. Attempted to explain the situation, but even as he recounted the events, he recognized how unbelievable they sounded. He described Duke's unusual behavior, the way the dog had pulled toward the playground, and the remarkable transformation that had occurred when the small girl spoke to his dog. The commander listened carefully, and when finished, there was a long pause before the commander spoke again. The commander explained that he had watched the video himself, and that what was describing seemed to match what was visible in the footage. The commander told that he should be prepared for significant media attention. By noon, his personal cell phone was ringing constantly. News reporters wanted interviews. Radio stations wanted him to call in and talk about the incident. Social media accounts were creating hashtags related to the story. Duke and Emma began trending on Twitter. Facebook groups were being created to discuss the video and its implications. YouTube channels were uploading the video with various titles and commentary. TikTok users were creating their own versions and reactions to the footage. Sarah received a call from Jennifer Martinez that morning. Jennifer wanted to check in on Emma and offer her contact information in case Sarah wanted to do any media interviews. Sarah was shocked to learn that the incident had become a viral sensation. She hadn't checked social media since the previous day, and she was completely unprepared for the level of attention that the moment with Emma and Duke had generated. Jennifer explained that millions of people had already seen the video, and that the interest seemed to be growing exponentially. By Thursday morning, the story had reached international news outlets. BBC News picked up the story and ran a segment about it. News channels in Canada, Australia, and the United Kingdom were covering the incident. The video had been translated into multiple languages, with subtitles allowing people around the world to understand what had transpired. The story had become a global phenomenon, a moment of pure human connection that transcended borders and cultural boundaries. Animal behaviorists and dog training experts began appearing on news programs to discuss the video and offer explanations for Duke's unusual behavior. Some experts suggested that the police dog had somehow sensed something special about Emma, perhaps a calm, gentle energy that triggered a different response than the dog typically exhibited. Other experts hypothesized that children, with their untainted perception of the world, communicated with animals in ways that adults had forgotten. Still, other experts admitted that they couldn't explain what had occurred, and that the video seemed to defy conventional understanding of dog behavior. Officer found himself becoming a minor celebrity. He received interview requests from every major news outlet. His Instagram account, which had previously had fewer than 100 followers, suddenly had over 50,000 followers within a single day. Reporters camped outside his house, hoping to get a statement or photograph. Police department officials advised him to be cautious about his public statements, but they also recognized that this was an opportunity for positive public relations for law enforcement. Emma became known as the girl who tamed the police dog. Her kindergarten teachers reported that other parents were suddenly interested in Emma's school and wanted their children to attend the same institution. Businesses in the area began reaching out to Sarah, offering sponsorships and partnerships. Sarah found herself in a surreal situation where her quiet, ordinary life had been transformed overnight into something extraordinary and public. The video continued to accumulate views. Within 1 week, it had been viewed over 20 million times. Within 2 weeks, that number had doubled. The story of Emma and Duke had become more than just a viral video. It had become a cultural moment, a touchstone that people could point to when they needed to believe in goodness and connection. In the weeks following the viral explosion of the Emma and Duke video, animal behaviorists and dog training experts from around the world began conducting serious research into what had occurred at Riverside Park. Universities and veterinary schools requested copies of the video for study. Doctoral candidates saw opportunities for groundbreaking research projects. The scientific community was genuinely puzzled by Duke's behavior, and many respected experts found themselves unable to provide conventional explanations for what the video clearly documented. Doctor, a renowned animal behaviorist from university, was one of the first prominent experts to publicly analyze the video. Doctor had spent 30 years studying dog behavior and had written several definitive textbooks on the subject. In an interview with NPR, Doctor explained that Duke's behavior violated several fundamental principles of police dog training. She stated, "Police dogs are conditioned to maintain professional distance and focus on their work assignments." What we see in this video is a complete abandonment of that training in response to a specific human stimulus. The girl's words and tone appear to have triggered something profound in the dog, something that superseded years of professional conditioning. When asked to explain what might cause such a transformation, Doctor offered several hypotheses. One theory suggested that young children, particularly those with naturally calm and open demeanors, communicate with animals in ways that trigger different neural pathways than adult communication does. Another hypothesis proposed that some dogs possessed heightened sensitivity to genuine human emotion, and that Emma's authentic kindness resonated with Duke on a level that bypassed his conditioned behaviors. Doctor was careful to note, however, that these were theories and that the video documented something that science couldn't fully explain with current understanding of animal cognition. Dr. Michael, a veterinarian and dog trainer from UCLA, offered a different perspective. Doctor suggested that Duke's behavior might be explained by the concept of emotional attunement, where dogs could read and respond to genuine human emotions in ways that transcended normal behavioral parameters. According to Doctor's theory, Emma's complete lack of fear and her genuine affection for the dog had communicated a message to Duke that overrode the dog's working mode. Doctor stated in an interview with the Today Show, "Dogs are fundamentally emotional creatures. What we may have witnessed is a moment of profound emotional communication between two sentient beings. The girl's innocence and the dog's sensitivity to that innocence created a bridge of understanding that was almost spiritual in nature." Officer began to view his partnership with Duke in an entirely new light after the viral incident. For 8 years, he had related to Duke primarily as a working partner and a tool for law enforcement. Duke was trained, disciplined, and focused on the job. But the events at Riverside Park forced to confront the reality that Duke was far more than just a working animal. Beneath all the training and conditioning was a sentient being with emotional depths and capacities that had perhaps never fully appreciated. Started keeping a journal about his observations of Duke's behavior, particularly noting instances where the dog displayed emotional responses that went beyond typical police dog behavior. He documented times when Duke seemed to recognize and respond to emotional states in people around him. He recorded moments when the dog appeared to be comforting rather than alert, gentle rather than professional. These observations gradually formed the foundation of a deeper understanding between handler and dog. One particular incident occurred 3 weeks after the park encounter, was called to a domestic violence situation at a residence in his district. The situation involved a frightened woman and her 2 young children. When arrived, the woman was visibly distressed and the children were crying, conducted the necessary police procedures and called for additional support. However, before he could complete his report, Duke began acting unusually. The dog approached the children slowly and gently, allowing them to pet him and interact with him in ways that Duke typically wouldn't permit during active calls. Watched as his dog seemed to understand that these children needed comfort more than they needed the dog to be a working police animal. Made a decision at that moment. He began to think about Duke not as a working tool but as a partner with agency and emotional intelligence. He started asking himself questions he had never previously considered. What does Duke want? What are Duke's emotional needs? How can I honor both Duke's nature as a police dog and his nature as a sentient being with emotional capacity? These reflections led to conversations with other police dog handlers. He discovered that many of them had experienced similar moments where their dogs displayed unexpected emotional responses. Some handlers resisted acknowledging this aspect of their dogs, preferring to maintain the traditional view of K9 units as purely working animals. But others, particularly some of the more experienced handlers, admitted that they had always suspected their dogs possessed emotional depths that the formal training protocols didn't acknowledge. Attended a conference on animal-human relationships and police dog training in Denver. At the conference, he met researchers, veterinarians, and other handlers who were beginning to challenge conventional wisdom about police dogs. The conference featured presentations about the emotional intelligence of dogs, the psychological impact of working dogs on their handlers, and the ethical considerations of using animals for law enforcement purposes. During a panel discussion, stood up and asked a question that had been troubling him since the park incident. How do we balance the need for professional police dogs with the recognition that these animals are sentient beings with their own emotional needs and capacities? The panel struggled to answer his question directly, but the exchange sparked considerable discussion among the conference attendees. Several people approached afterward to discuss their own experiences with emotionally complex police dogs. By the end of the conference, had formulated a new philosophy about his relationship with Duke. He decided that he could honor both aspects of the dog, the professional working animal, and the emotionally sensitive sentient being. He could continue Duke's police work while also recognizing and respecting the dog's emotional intelligence and capacity for connection. Began implementing new practices in his daily routine with Duke. He set aside time specifically for non-working interaction, periods where Duke could simply be a companion rather than a working animal. He started paying more attention to Duke's emotional states and adjusting his approach based on what he perceived the dog to be experiencing. He began teaching other handlers about his observations, suggesting that acknowledging the emotional depths of police dogs might actually improve their effectiveness in the field. When people asked about the incident at Riverside Park, he now gave a different kind of answer than he initially had. Instead of expressing confusion or bewilderment, would reflect on what the moment had taught him about Duke and about the nature of the human-animal bond. He would say, "That 3-year-old girl taught my dog and taught me something profound about connection and authenticity. She reminded us both that beneath all the training and conditioning, we're simply beings capable of recognizing and responding to genuine kindness." Emma changed how I see Duke. She changed my entire understanding of what it means to be a partner to another living creature. 6 months after the viral video had captured the hearts of millions around the world, Officer James stood in front of a group of police officers, community leaders, and media representatives at a small ceremony in Riverside Park. The location was intentionally symbolic, the exact playground where Emma and Duke had created their extraordinary moment of connection. Behind him stood a wooden sign, freshly painted and adorned with an image of a child petting a dog. The sign read, "Duke's Circle, a community program celebrating connection between children and police dogs." Had spent months developing the concept for Duke's Circle. The program was revolutionary in its approach to police dog community engagement. Rather than viewing K9 units strictly as working animals to be kept at professional distance, Duke's Circle sought to facilitate safe, supervised interactions between children and police dogs. The program wasn't designed to compromise the police dogs' training or effectiveness in their working roles. Instead, it was designed to honor both dimensions of these animals, their professional capabilities, and their capacity for genuine human connection. The first Duke's Circle location had been established at Riverside Park in partnership with the local Parks and Recreation Department, but his ambition extended far beyond a single location. He had developed comprehensive training protocols for officers and dogs participating in the program. He had created educational materials about police dogs for children and families. Most importantly, He had secured funding from multiple sources to expand the program to other communities. Emma Mitchell, now 3 years and 7 months old, sat in the front row of chairs arranged for the ceremony. She wore a simple white dress and held a small bouquet of flowers that the community had provided. Next to her sat her mother, Sarah, whose eyes were moist with tears as she watched her daughter being honored for a moment that had changed so many lives. Sarah had left her marketing job and now worked part-time as a consultant while focusing on managing the unexpected aspects of her family's newfound fame. She had become an advocate for the program, speaking to community groups about the importance of human-animal connection. Duke sat majestically beside Officer, wearing his police harness and collar. The German Shepherd had become something of a celebrity himself. He received fan mail from around the world, letters from children expressing their love and admiration for the dog. Educational institutions requested his presence for assemblies. Corporate sponsors wanted to use Duke's image in their advertisements. Had carefully managed Duke's growing fame, trying to balance the dog's role as a celebrity with his continuing responsibilities as a working police dog. During the ceremony, spoke about the inspiration for Duke's Circle. He explained how Emma's fearless kindness and Duke's unexpected response had forced him to reconsider everything he thought he knew about police dogs and human-animal relationships. He spoke about the importance of recognizing that these animals were not merely tools, but sentient beings capable of profound emotional connection. He announced that Duke's Circle would be expanding to 15 cities over the next year, with comprehensive training and protocols to ensure both safety and genuine connection. The program had already begun to show remarkable results in its first 6 months of operation. Children who had previously been afraid of police officers became more comfortable with law enforcement through their interactions with the trained police dogs. Parents reported that their children had developed greater empathy and emotional intelligence through participation in Duke's Circle activities. Police officers involved in the program reported improved mental health and reduced stress levels, attributing this to the emotional bonding experiences with children and the recognition of their dogs' emotional capacities. Educational researchers had begun studying the program's impact on child development. Preliminary findings suggested that children who participated in Duke's Circle showed increased confidence, improved social skills, and greater overall emotional well-being. The program was being recognized as a model for innovative community policing that emphasized connection and compassion alongside professional responsibility. Emma had become the unofficial ambassador for Duke's Circle. She appeared in promotional materials for the program, always photographed with Duke or other police dogs participating in the initiative. News outlets regularly featured Emma in stories about the program's expansion. She was invited to speak at community events, though her participation at age 3 was necessarily limited. Sarah often accompanied Emma to these events, helping her daughter understand the significance of what they were doing. 1 year after the park encounter, Emma and Duke returned to Riverside Park for the official 1-year anniversary celebration of the viral moment. The event drew hundreds of people, families, media representatives, community leaders, and animal advocates. There was a small stage set up near the sandbox where the original encounter had occurred. Local dignitaries spoke about the importance of the program. Animal behaviorists discussed their ongoing research into the Emma and Duke phenomenon. And then, as the centerpiece of the event, a simple, quiet moment unfolded. Emma, wearing the same pink princess dress she had worn on that fateful Tuesday afternoon, approached Duke. The dog sat calmly, his tail wagging gently. Emma placed her small hand on Duke's head and stroked his fur, just as she had done that first time. The moment was captured by hundreds of cameras and phones, but this time, the documentation felt different. Instead of capturing shock and amazement, the photographs and videos captured tenderness and recognition, a continuing story rather than a singular event. Officer reflected on the journey from that first confused and astonished moment to where they now stood. He thought about how a 3-year-old girl had taught an entire community something about the power of genuine connection. He thought about how Emma's 2 simple words, "good boy," had rippled outward in ways that no one could have predicted. He thought about how Duke had responded not just to Emma's words, but to what those words represented: authentic kindness, genuine acceptance, and unconditional love. 3 years later, Duke's Circle had expanded to 42 cities across the United States and Canada. The program had trained over 500 police dogs and their handlers. Hundreds of thousands of children had participated in the program. Research institutions were studying the program's methodology for potential application in other contexts. Corporate sponsors were funding the program's expansion internationally. Emma, now 6 years old, had started first grade. She was still referred to in her school as the girl who tamed the police dog, though she herself seemed unaware of her celebrity status. She loved school, made friends easily, and possessed a remarkable capacity for empathy that teachers attributed partly to her early experiences with Duke. When asked by other children why she wasn't afraid of the big dog that day at the park, Emma would simply smile and say, "Because he was a good boy, and good boys deserve to know that someone sees that goodness in them." Officer often thought about that sunny Tuesday afternoon at Riverside Park when he least expected his life to change. He thought about how a moment of genuine connection between a child and a dog could inspire a movement, could challenge professional paradigms, and could remind an entire world that beneath all our training and conditioning and professional responsibilities, we are fundamentally creatures capable of recognizing and responding to authentic kindness. Emma and Duke had created something that would endure long after that afternoon had passed, a legacy of connection, compassion, and the profound power of seeing the goodness in another being and celebrating it openly. That was their greatest gift to the world.